Good morning, my friends. Welcome back to the Live, Build, Change podcast. This is the Morning Mindset Edition, which is a daily shot in the soul, a shot of truth to help you get your mind oriented around the truth of God for the day. We've been digging into Ephesians chapter 2, looking at some absolutely amazing truths of what God has said about us, about what He has done for us through our connection with Jesus Christ. He has said that we were dead in our trespasses and sins, unable to respond to God. And because of His great love for us, He made us alive even when we were dead. So when we didn't have the ability to show interest in God or to pursue God, He made us alive together with Christ. So when Christ rose from the dead, we rose from the dead. That dead part of us came alive. And it's by God's grace that we are now saved, that we had the opportunity to place our faith in Christ. And we had just yesterday gotten into talking about verse 6 of Ephesians 2, where it says He raised us up with Him and seated us with Him in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus. People often refer to this as a positional truth because the way it says in Christ Jesus, they're trying to point out that we are positioned in Christ. We are part of Him. We are united with Him. And so in that way, because He is seated in Christ, in the heavenly realms, we too are considered to be seated in the heavenly realms. But what if that's not to be considered as seated in the heavenly realms? But what if it really is that we are seated in the heavenly realms? What if we really are safely right there with Jesus at the right hand of the Father in the heavenly realms? That's our real identity. And that this life we're living right now, of course, is an earthly life and is very real. But we are not solely here. We are safe. The real us, the us that matters, is there, safe, secure in the heavenly realm with Jesus. And our interaction here on this planet takes on a new meaning if that's true. We are no longer endangered here like we tend to think of being endangered with car accidents and cancer and things like that. I mean, those things can still happen to this earthly body. Of course they can. But this earthly body isn't us. It isn't the real us. It isn't the whole us. Our true identity, the true us, is already safe in the heavenlies. And we view life right now through the lens of, say, the eyes of this body, interacting with this world. And if we keep reading, we understand some of what that's about. It says in verse 8, "For by grace you've been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast." So he's reiterating how God made us alive, and God has done this thing that we call salvation. But in verse 10, he says, "For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." So let's unpack this very carefully. We are God's workmanship. He has crafted us. And it says we were created in Christ Jesus. That is the same phraseology that is used when He says we are seated with Him in the heavenly realms. It says we're seated us with Him in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus. That same phrase, in Christ Jesus. So we were created in Christ Jesus. At the same time, we were seated in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus. You see, being in Christ not only gave us this secure home in heaven, that where we actually are seated now, safe and secure, but also has created us to be a workman with work to do that God has prepared for us in advance. And it's work here on this earth. So that's where the connection between being seated in heaven and yet viewing a life that's here on the planet come together. We are safe and secure, seated with Christ in the heavenly realm. Yet we are working on this planet as God's emissary for the good of the planet and the good of the people He loves. Let's talk again tomorrow.